Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tracy Allen with the Kansas City Call newspaper, as well as Cascade Sports, and I'm glad that each and every one of you have joined us. I have a special guest here with me. His name is David Wallace of Education First and Athletics Second Coalition. Just so many of you who do not know, I've known David for about a little over 20 years, but I know he's been doing a lot in the sports arena, not only just here in the Kansas City area, but also even outside. David, first of all, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And a lot of people who I know are have been active in sports, who have either participated from one time or another in their early life or even in their older life. Uh, Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you played high school basketball here in the Kansas City metro area, but I also know that you had some time as far as playing at the college level. So tell us a little bit just about your athletic journey, how you got started, because all of it was right here, really in the Kansas City area.
Absolutely. Well, thank you and Cascade Sports for this opportunity. As you mentioned about myself, I'm a native of Kansas City, Missouri. I did play locally here at East High School, graduated, went to Penn Valley Community College, graduated from there, and then went on and played at William Penn University. Some of the accolades I was able to receive while in high school was academic, athletic, All-American from the Army, and then also All-Star activities at William Penn University.
Okay. And William Penn is in Iowa, correct?
It is in Oskaloosa, Iowa. It is cold, cold, cold.
It's cold, cold, cold. How cold is it? And hopefully you weren't cold on the floor when you were shooting. I hope not.
No, no, it is extremely cold up there during the winter months, but no, I was not cold on the floor there. I was a team captain, and also I had all-star honors when playing there, and I had opportunities to go overseas as well.
Okay, where
These
did you go
trials.
over? Okay, where did you play overseas?
It was tryouts. I had to go to Deerfield, Illinois to try out to go overseas, but unfortunately at that time we found out there's only so many jobs available and a whole lot of players trying out. So I made it to the final round.
Okay, and the final round. One of the things I wanted to kind of talk with you a little bit about, a lot of guys and a lot of gals, they get involved in athletics at a young age. Maybe it's because, they know that they're good at it, or maybe it's an opportunity for them to leave the environment. What kind of brought you into the desire to play? I don't know if basketball was the only sport you played, if there was other sports, and what was it about the game of basketball that really triggered where you kind of have progressed on is from the standpoint of sports?
Absolutely. Pretty much what that was back when we were growing up, we always played outside. So we were at the playground or at the park. And those parks consisted of Central Park, Chelsea Park, North Park, Cypress Park. So that's where we were beginning to play. Then I was starting to grow. So as you continue to grow and get taller, of course, the expectation was you should be playing basketball. So I took that up, start practicing, continue to practice because there were a lot of good players at my time during my age and during the time I was coming through high school and also elementary and junior high. So you really had to practice to get your game up.
Mhm. You mentioned some good guys. Who are some of the guys you had to play against, especially when you're at East? Because I know Central, of course, was a good program, had always been a good program under Jack Bush, but there were others like at Southeast and some of the other ones, even outskirt schools like the Raytown South and so forth.
Absolutely. Some of the players that I played against and had to go against was Anthony Peeler in that time of era, which everyone knew about Anthony Peeler. There were some guys over at Northeast High School like Aaron Collier, Lamar Reddit at East High School. Southeast had some gentlemen as well. Then you had people at Westport, the Potts brothers, and also some Gibson brothers as well, Van Horn, and also Southwest. They had the Urban brothers, so it was a lot of wholesome players back then.
You talk about wholesome players back then. I'm not saying that there's not wholesome players today, but what is and I'm really being serious, but what's the difference with when you were coming up and the type of athlete back in that time period compared to now? Because that was mostly the 1980s, correct?
Exactly. The difference back then compared to now is that we really had to get in outside. We didn't have gyms to go to and work on our games, so we had to work outside, and then our work ethic was a lot different. Coaches were honest. We didn't talk back to coaches. We didn't get attitudes because if you did, you just didn't play. Versus now, what we kind of see, there's a lot of changes with the AAU circuit, even with the recreational circuit here in Kansas City and across the metropolitan area.
So the changes in athletes, the changes in sports, that didn't derail you from what you're doing today. I know you are the founder and executive director, actually, of Education First, Athletic Second Coalition. How did you come up with that organization, and what kind of led you to start it, particularly during the time period that you started?
Yes, ma'am. Oddly enough, I was actually doing some flag football coaching at the football field. And oddly enough, as I tell everyone, my testimony is that a voice spoke to me and wanted me to lead his children. I didn't know what that was at the time. I was a young 20-year-old just coming out of college, still trying to pursue to go overseas. And a group of us got together and formed a coalition, which is Education First. And that coalition got formed out of just trying to give back to the community and teach the fundamentals, not just in sports, but also in the classroom.
What did you see during that time when you first started out, as far as particularly getting, especially urban parents, involved into the thought process that you had that, because I'm not stating that all parents are all focused on education and then some parents are just all focused on athletics. How did you get those two intertwined? How did you get particularly urban parents to recognize that while Johnny or Susie might be good in football or basketball or softball and volleyball, yet in order to get to their goal, they had to also make the classroom a priority.
Absolutely. One thing that we did use was that we also had little classroom sessions before practice and after practice. And those sessions included just doing like worksheets, math, spelling back then at that particular time. And what we found that was even though a student might be getting good grades in school, when they came to do those worksheets, they could not do them. So we want to include the parent participation along with those worksheets to show that parent, you might want to be double checking at the school because they might just be passing them on, which is not good because when they get ready to go out to the real world, they're not prepared.
Tell me about any challenges that you guys experienced, because I believe Education First Athletic Second Coalition began in the year 2000. Am I correct? 2000 or 2002?
It actually was 1998. And at that time, you really just had the activities that were at some of the community centers and after school. So it really wasn't a lot of community activities for after school sports. So Education First was one of the pillars that was able to do the after school and weekend programming in basketball, soccer, and things of that nature that included parent participation.
Okay. How did that go over? I know that through the years, you guys started having not just at several hundred, but you started getting close to working with close to, thousands of kids, really.
Absolutely. It was something new for the parents because they were used to just dropping their kids off at that local site and then coming back and picking them up. What we included which was one of our criteria, was you had to stay. And when you had to stay, then you got to participate in that program. So you had moms and dads out there doing drills and clinics and things of that nature. So when they left, not only did the child be able to gain something, so did the parent. So then they were able to take something back home and work on that together.
Did you guys also, from the standpoint of the education part of it, you talked about dealing with worksheets and recognizing that kids were not getting through the worksheets. How did you work specifically with schools, in particular, like the Kansas City, Missouri Public Schools Center, and I know you had a couple other public schools. How did you get to where the young people had to show you? Did you have things like progress reports that they had to bring in order for them to be able to participate, particularly when you guys started having uh, adding additional programming on, such as the not I want to use the AAU circuit, but your Greyhound programs and so forth.
Right. And yes, what we had was you had to maintain a 2.5 GPA, but then also we worked with some of the tutors and also the after school athletic and activity directors, and also some of the mentors and guidance counselors at those schools, that the participants were able to do that. And therefore, we formed a relationship with them to say, this is what we're doing after school. How can we help you during school? And it formed a really good relationship.
Mhm. How many would you say, from the standpoint of schools and maybe from the standpoint of young people, since '98, that you would say that education first, athletics second? Just this a rough figure.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're talking about over 20 years working in part of local school districts such as Hickman Mills. Uh, you're looking at KCMO, TK, Center School District. I mean, the list goes on. I'm easily over 10,000 plus, because we did the after school programming, we did the after school feeding the community programming, and it was the basketball piece and the soccer piece. So it's huge.
Mhm. You mentioned a little bit about the soccer piece. I'm not saying that particularly children of color are not involved in that, because we all know what we do from the standpoint of football and basketball. But how did that soccer piece come together? And was that something that you felt that kids that are not AKA football people, basketball people, would enjoy?
How that soccer piece came available was partnering with the KCK schools, because in that area they didn't have after school programming per se that was available. So we was able to partner with the National Soccer Association, which is housed in Kansas, and they were able to provide volunteers that came out. We used one of their local fields, and predominantly working with our Hispanic brothers and sisters, that got the interest up, and they were able to bring that back to the KCMO side to do that with the after school programming and weekends, predominantly down in the east side area, because again, they were lacking programming at that time. And then taking the combination of soccer, including that with basketball, which included the footwork, helped them both in both areas.
Okay. One of the things and I wanted to, before we go back to the education side, you had the opportunity and the blessing to form education first, athletics second, to be able to, I don't want to say call it an AAU program, because it really was kind of either or, but talk a little bit about how the Greyhounds came together and some of the success. For our audience that doesn't know, um, Education First, Athletics Second had a program specifically for middle and high school students who enjoyed, as far as the game of basketball, but they were able to take it a little bit further, and be able to play as far as competition, not just only locally, but competition that came from statewide and national. But again, I'm gonna leave that to you to kind of explain to our audience what that was all about.
Absolutely. What we found was that when we started getting kids in elementary level, they wanted us to continue to follow them when they got to middle school and high school. And oddly enough, those that really took interest in basketball continue to get better. And what we found was that you really want to separate them at that elementary, middle school level, because you didn't want to continue to combine both, because the ones that were getting better, it wouldn't have been good for them to continue to play in the recreation league levels type of playing. So that's why we created the competitive side. Unfortunately, at that point, there was a lot of teams that were now being formed here in Kansas City, a lot of other good organizations. So therefore, it was hard trying to compete, because unfortunately, just being honest, that's where people started to recruit other players away that were better players. So you still had to work with those players that were just strictly recreation, which that's where we came in to say we didn't want to turn any kid away. We still want to work with them. So therefore, regardless of the fact that they want to go to college to play, they still can fall back on life skills, but they had fun enjoying, continue to learn the game of basketball, which has then resulted into life skills, which that's how the Greyhounds continue to just grow from the elementary level all the way to the high school level.
Okay. David, one of the things that a lot of times, and it's a piece that people miss and continue to miss a lot, is, like I mentioned, from the standpoint of education. I think we can see in our sports world today, it's all about getting mine, get what belongs to me. And unfortunately, our young athletes today, when it comes to the new thing that's going on, name, image, likeness, basically NIL,
Mhm.
AAU programs, nothing against those. But it seems like everybody's missing, particularly from the athletic world, whether it's the coaches, the parents, the families, even the young athlete, the importance of education. When you were coming through East High School, Penn Valley Junior College, now Community College, William Penn College, how hard was it for you to keep your focus on education, getting that degree, rather than just saying, hey, I'm going to get mine and I'm going to become a star basketball player?
Exactly. Back then it was hard back then as well, I must be honest, because you had parents that were on you. If you didn't perform in the classroom, you weren't able to play in sports. And then also with piggyback to just to that was that coaches. Our coaches back then swatted. And SWAT was mean that if you got D's and F's, you got 2 and 3 SWATs, and no one wanted to get swatted back then. So we're like, hey, I want to make sure I maintain my grade point average and not get any D's or F's. So you had to get the focus of maintaining not just with your coach, but also with your parents. But then also we wanted to play. And it was a no nonsense attitude back then.
So a no nonsense attitude, not to say there's not a no nonsense attitude today, but it definitely has switched a total different direction and so forth. What would you tell, particularly someone that was very good or is currently very good in athletics, maybe is being pursued by a college, has big time dreams, maybe someday, not only playing college sports, but professional sports, or like yourself, and you and I have, because just our audience doesn't know this, I used to play as far as basketball as well. Actually played basketball and ran track, and I also coach at the high school level. I coached at Center High School, Bishop Miege High School, and Bishop Hogan High School. Along with many of you probably do or don't know, I was a sports writer for many, many years. But what would you say to a young person that is pursuing these different areas, the things that they need to know if they want to have the success that they dream about or people keep telling them that they're supposed to have?
Great question. One would be, what tools do you have in your toolbox? Where is God in that toolbox, first and foremost? And then second of that is going to be, what other things do you have to fall back on in case that doesn't work out for us at next level with that scholarship? If you get injured, that scholarship is pulled. If the coach leaves, what are you going to fall back on if that doesn't work back? I mean, if that doesn't work out, and is that a life skill? Is that a trade that you're going to work? Is that doing hair? Is that going to have your own construction company, your own cleaning company? Just what tools do you have or plan to have in that toolbox? I would ask them that question.
Anything else you would like to ask them as far as from the standpoint, suggest, particularly when it comes from an academic standpoint? I know that various colleges, depending on the size, they'll have tutoring programs, things of that nature. How can they get themselves together athletically? I mean, not athletic, but educationally before they, go further, whether it's to be a football player, basketball player, volleyball player, soccer, softball in college or wherever they might do.
Another great question. And that would be, again, in that toolbox. And I know things have kind of changed now, but have you done your clearinghouse? I know they're trying to do away with the SAT and ACT testing, but back then, have you got those tests taken care of? And also looking to go to school in state or out of state. And then also what we've told them too, which is a combination of both. Where are you on that position board? And they go, well, coach, what do you mean by position board? I said, if you're being recruited, they're going to look at your academics, your clearinghouse, your testing, but also the position that you play. How many other players are available that they're looking at that's going to be on that position board, and where do you rank at?
And then this is a final question I wanted to ask you to kind of speak to our audience, in particular our young athletes. What is the one thing that they can take that will help them put themselves over the top when it comes to other athletes or even coaches for that matter, as far as that one thing that can separate them from being just, I don't want to use the word mediocre, but if I have to say it's mediocre, to being a higher level?
One thing they would have to take away is ask the question themselves: do they love the game, or do they just like the game? If they love the game, they're going to do any and everything possible to make sure they obtain that goal. If they like it, they're just going to do it about 50%. And if you're going to do it 50%, it's not going to work. And that goes just like with your job and just life itself. Anything that you only do halfway, you're not going to get full success.
As we get ready to close, David, tell me, what are some of the things that Education First, Athletics Second is working on right now? And say, for instance, a parent or a coach or even an athlete is interested in getting involved in some of the programs. How can they get involved with Education First, Athletics Second Coalition?
Absolutely. Some of the things that Education First is now working on, we've been kind of doing for the last couple of years, but the board itself and Education First have been working on partnerships in the community. One, we're working with its art institution with House Independence, and they provide an arts program. As you can tell by the picture behind me, my daughter drew and painted. We're going to be offering those kind of activities after school along with the basketball piece to where not only going to get basketball, but you're going to be able to participate in the arts program.
Okay.
And then also we have a new partnership with Hy-Vee Arena to where we're going to be working on a 5K for families coming in 2024. So we want families to be able to come out and participate in that as a family event, not just an individual event. And then also we're getting back into now coaching teams, which we've been, again, like I mentioned, kind of dormant from doing that for a couple of years, but get back into that along with continue to do our community clinics that we do on a monthly basis.
Okay. If they needed to get in touch with you, website, how can they get in touch? How can they contact that website? An email address, telephone number?
Perfect. Our website is www.ed.first.org, and telephone number is 816-392-9847. And those are basic two ways you can get in contact with us, and or you can email at the David DAVID Wallace WALLACE the number 44 at gmail.com.
Okay, tell us that again, just so people will know that.
Absolutely. The website, www.edfirst.org. Telephone number is 816-392-9847. And that email address is David C. Wallace, that's WALLACE, the number 44 at gmail.com.
David, I want to thank you and Education First Athletics Second Coalition for joining us as far as this afternoon. I did want to ask you a question before we let go. You know,
Yes.
I'm a very huge sports fan. Couple of things. Obviously, there's a few changes with the Kansas City Chiefs that have gone on, as well as our ever-changing arena of college sports. You don't know which conference anyone is in these days. What do you think about all of this? What do you think?
You mentioned earlier the name likeness thing is taking place, and now everyone is not everyone, but most folks now are playing for money, not for the team, and that can kind of mess up that continuity of that team because if you're going in with individuality, you're not with team. So then that messes up things that you've been successful for in the past, and it's going to be hard to repeat. Like you mentioned with the Chris Jones, which I definitely understand why, and very well deserving of it. But then also too, you have to look back at the bigger picture.
And when you think about the bigger picture, what is that bigger picture for some of our fans and some young athlete and mom and dad don't know?
It goes back to like we were talking about what is in your toolbox, and again, well deserving of what you believe is owed to you. But can you work even harder to prove that hey, you missed out on this opportunity and then gain more at the end?
Well, thank you so much, David, and thank you, Education First Athletics Coalition, for joining us. I would encourage our audience, any coach, any parent, any athlete, any aspiring person that wants to be in broadcast, writing, or whatever. This is something that I think that all of us need, especially if sports is something that you enjoy. I know it's something I have always grown up enjoying. I know it's something that David has always grown up enjoying to do and be a part of. But it takes a lot. It's more than just playing the game. It's preparing yourself not only, I would say spiritually, but educationally and personally as an individual. And I know Coach Wallace would agree with me on that 100%. So again, I want to thank Education First Athletics Second Coalition for joining us. Audience, he gave you some tremendous information. He gave you some tools, some contact numbers. I challenge you, if you have a young person or you know a child down the street or in your neighborhood, grandma and grandpa, if you have a son, grandson, or granddaughter that needs to learn how to put all of those pieces together, this is a phenomenal organization to be a part of. So again, thank you. Thank you, audience, for joining me, Tracy Allen, editor of the Kansas City Call newspaper and Cascade Sports. And until next time, peace.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.